Sherpa, and tonight we're going to be doing the hydrangea, a very busy, wonderful, so challenging for artist flowers. It's such a great creative opportunity, but such a source of frustration. There's so many different ways to paint it. Do you want to go one stroke? Do you want to do slow hyperrealism? Where are you going to be? So many artistic decisions. So this class is actually going to be such a gem of a class because we're going to actually not only show you how to paint this flower, but how to think like an artist in relationship to the flower. Ooh, on the mic is my husband, John.
Hello.
He's going to help me do all this mayhem by making sure that you can see everything that I'm talking about on the canvas. He's going to zoom in with robotic cameras. He's going to make sure that your questions are answered in chat if he sees them. If he sees them, make sure you put your comments, if you're here during the live, all in caps. So that the moderators or John have a really good chance of catching them. We try to get to as many as we can during the show. Tonight's materials, we've got an 8x8 surface here because it's Tuesday night, and that's what we paint on Tuesday nights. I have wishes for bounties, blessings, relief, and understanding in the world. That would be a cool thing, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. Be a cool thing. Dioxazine Purple acrylic paint, Quinacridone Magenta acrylic paint. All of this is going to be acrylic. Ultramarine blue, Phthalo blue. This is Naples Yellow light. Sometimes I like the tight knit yellow version of this. There's a whole blog I have about this color because it's called a bunch of different things just to make your life crazier. But the blog breaks it all down so you just know what brands have the right paint. And that ranges from $3 to $13. So it's not necessarily a big investment. It's a great green biased yellow. Dioxazine Purple and Phthalo Green again, and some titanium white in the middle. Now, I have in reserve some other colors that as we get into this, if we feel like we need them for pop and intensity, we'll definitely go for that. But really, John, I think let's put up a step one.
Ooh, a step one.
So the first thing that we've got to do is get a base background color. If you look at the reference photo, and that is on the website for you to check out, you'll notice that there's a tremendous amount of depth. And whether you're painting one stroke hydrangeas or you're painting the loose painterly hydrangeas, or you're sitting there going, I'm going to just paint every petal to all the petals are painted hydrangeas, you have to have a deep base. So no matter which way you decide to go as an artist, you've got to start with a lot of depth of color. So let's do that. And I picked Phthalo Green and Dioxazine Purple. Could have done black, but these two, as you can see, do almost a weird indigo. So it has a bit of the black to it, but it feels a little more like the natural garden. And it's going to give us a more dynamic surface to build up from. All the depth we want, all the contrast, but a dynamic surface. Now I'm using a number 26 bright from the Ruby Satin line. You could use any big brush you have, though. This one is not particularly brush sensitive. And the reason I'm saying that is so many people come from the one stroke sensibility for these flowers. And that is very brush specific. You've got to have the right tools in relationship to one stroke painting. That's because the painting is about the stroke and the stroke is created by the brush. We're going to use some of that thinking, though. We're going to use some one-stroke wisdom. Right? In what we're doing. Do you see how beautiful this deep color is? Now, I could have done contrast to the finished painting if I wanted, like, bright pops of color to be coming through, like, some kind of yellow or something, like a raw sienna. But I really would be more inclined to do that with white hydrangeas over the deep purples and blues and other colors that come hydrangeas. Notice also, and I don't know if the camera can pick this up because it's so dark, there is multi-dimensional color here.
Oh my gosh, yes, we can totally see it.
Right? There's multi-dimensional color here, but it's so deep.
No, when you're saying one stroke is sort of that's now sort of a catch-all for a technique by one particular artist, but
that's actually a misnomer.
Right, it goes back to
this goes back to the 11th century.
Early 1660s for sure.
Well, no, it's 11th century for double loaded.
Yeah, oh, that's right. Yeah,
because what happened is craftsmen and different artisanal people who would make chess or ornate objects to be living in your home. They would often paint those with finishing work, especially if you look out at Russia, and they would double and triple load brushes, and in one technique or a single stroke, they would create a petal or a flower. So there's the modern branding version of that, and that's cool, but we're really speaking about this in the artistic sensibility of technique more than that.
Right.
Right. Okay. And of all of the skills of technique, I find the ones coming out of China and Russia to be my favorite.
Yeah.
Just for like, when you're talking about like artists getting like tricky with it and like doing something where you're like, what? How did you do it? Those are the places that they, you know, they're like, I will paint a mom. And you're like, where'd that mom come from, you genius? But that's where I would say so. And Russia does the big drama with the dark values and the bright colors and lots of little filigree lines to finish out. So there's just a lot to look at in this field, and there's so much written up about it. It's a deep, deep, deep resource. All right, you want to photograph step 1?
Is that step 1? All right.
Yeah, and then we'll move on to step 2, but actually we're going to be doing some technique. Let's wait a little minute for step 2 because I want to show you guys some concept and some technique. I had some teaching thought here because I want you guys to think about things like artists too. I don't want you just to know the techniques or how to paint this step by step. I went on YouTube and I looked at all the hydrangea flower paintings and I kind of went, what's missing? What don't we have right now? What questions can I answer that have not been copiously answered before, right? You know, from everything from Q-tip paintings to the one-stroke paintings, like what have we not talked about in hydrangeas before? And so we're going to get into that so you can kind of understand them. And the reason for this is, this is under some sort of, it's caught. It's caught on something.
It certainly is.
Okay, there we go. All right, it's free now. It's free. All right, I'm going to dry this, and then I'm going to show you something on my tablet, and I'm going to show you something on a pad. And these things are going to help you have a higher rate of success for your finished painting.
So, yes, thoroughly dry your surface. As you see, I'm going to switch over here to this other angle because you can kind of see as the surface dry, it changes sheen. And that really helps you know when it's dry.
Yeah.
But you just surprised me. I was
like, I just need it dry enough to put the iPad down.
Oh.
So you guys should be able to see this well enough for me to be able to do this. So here's our reference photo, right? Very busy piece of kit, these flowers. Busy piece of kit. So when artists look at these, they generally look first at overall form, structure, and value. And you would be breaking those up in your mind. If you look, this itself, right here, is actually a cluster. Let me make this line thicker so you can really see it. Because I can get rid of it pretty easily in a minute. So you see how this cluster right there, then there's one kind of peaking here. We have one coming off here. There's a diminished one there, and then there's another good forward round here. Then between here, you have these sort of out of focus little flowers that are coming through here. So when artists look at this, right, they look at what am I going to put in focus? What am I going to draw the eye to? Most chances are that many of these reduced flowers here in this space will be less focused. And the artist will put, these here might still be in focus, but a lot of this will be out of focus. The other thing that they're going to decide is how detailed am I going to get about these flowers? Now I want to show you something about these flowers, and this one here is a very good thing. Now, if you're doing the single stroke or you're doing any realistic representation of them, you have to be kind of aware of their basic layering because you have to figure out what petals to paint first. Whether you paint them loose or you paint them slowly and meticulously, you have to figure out which ones to paint first. So if you look at this, the top petal, right, which is kind of this teardrop shape, is generally this one here. And then there's two tucked petals, right? These two tucked ones. And this is most of the flowers, even though occasionally they'll have sometimes a fifth little petal, right? And then there's this one here. Interestingly enough, because of the way this layers, this petal generally gets done number 1. These petals get generally done second and third, and this one is done finished. And that's why you are constantly building the flower in your paint in the way it would organically grow. Whether you're painting it loose, whether you're painting it realistic, you've got to capture that process. All right, let me put this back and then, I know it's hidden. Don't tell me things I don't already know. So there we go. So that's a thing I want you guys to think about. The other thing I want you guys to think about is your tools and your stroke and how you're going to get this flower done. Right? And I had originally drawn out some little pencil sketches trying to explain the same thing, but then I realized, oh, I have an iPad and I can just show you with my iPad in bright paint. So that's what I decided to do.
Technology.
I will probably work. I'm going to get my number 8 cat's tongue.
Are we still in the demo phase?
We're still in demo phase.
Okay.
I will let you know when we're going to get out of the demo phase.
All right.
And I'm going to pick up some dark purple just because it will really, really show. I might let some of my white get in there so you can kind of see it. And when I'm going to make a petal stroke, and you guys have to kind of think about this, I'm going to be making a series of strokes like that. They're going to be partial curls, right? There you go. That's kind of a petal. When we've done this before, you guys are familiar. Side of the brush, toe of the brush. Because some of these petals will be foreshortened. They'll be facing us. And so we've got to be able to get thin strokes, and then we've got to be able to get thicker strokes, right? And we want to capture a general shape. You can do hydrangeas with a filbert, with a round and angle. There's a lot of brushes that will do it. Let's talk about the filbert real quick. Right? A lot of people love filberts for flowers. They really do. It's just like one of their favorites. But you still have to be able to do these types of strokes. You've got to be able to do a full petal, some slightly angled petals, and petals on edges. Right? And you can kind of see these look like little flowers a little bit in and of themselves, even though we're just doing strokes. The other brush people like to use is a round, and most people on the round that I've noticed, they tend to do this where they try to use the round to kind of build the flower that way. I don't really agree with that as a way to do it. I think it's hard on the brush. You know, I think that it's better to just use the round for what it is, which is, you know, capable of just doing nice little pointed flowers. You can see that these are a little bit pointier than the actual hydrangea. However, when you look at artists that do it this way, you know, they're doing a bunch of these strokes and they'll do it over a whole ball. They'll shade some of them light, they'll shade some of them dark. And in totality, it will look and feel like a hydrangea. And I think that's very important to understand is whether you paint these in a very slow, meticulous way or whether you paint them in a very loose, expressive, free way, it is the totality of the flower that will matter, that you get your highlights and your shadows and some delicacy of color. If you can get those things, then you can pretty much get away with almost anything. You know, you just want to make sure that you have in your brush the ability to kind of create little comma strokes. See what I'm doing?
Yeah.
If they go to the right, comma strokes to the left. And then, of course, little angled strokes like this for petals. And really any petals or leaves on anywhere, you're going to need to have that kind of work down. If you try to work that out, if you've never done that before and you just try to work that out on your canvas, right, that could be a little bit challenging. But if you have a piece of paper, like this is acrylic paper, a little bit thirsty, you can work commas out. And look, you can do these big and small pretty quickly, can't you?
Oh, yeah.
So now I can do like little diminished things and little faraway places. These marks work either way, right? My number 4 is the smallest brush I would do for an 8x8 surface. If you were trying to do these flowers and you wanted to do it with a round, I wouldn't go smaller than a 4 because it's making already a pretty tiny, compact petal as it is. So Does that help a little bit in putting into construct about how we think about the flower?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. At this point, as an artist, when we're thinking about flowers, we have to decide how we want to make that flower show and be out there for the viewer. I like to leave imagination in things for, put up step 2. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take some chalk and I'm going to sketch out the basic structures, the basic balls of where the flowers are going to be, so that as I'm doing petals, right, I can keep those forms in mind. It will help me create a better overall finished piece. All right, we've got this one here. And then we know there's a bit of a little bit one there, but it's really about this one, this one, this one, and this one. And then there's little petals. When we're painting, we want to paint that furthest back. Remember how I told you which one is the first petal, the second, third petal, and the fourth petal? That's because the first petal was the petal furthest back from us. So in this, we're going to want to paint these far flowers in here before we really paint these top balls up here. Does that make sense?
It does.
And what's wonderful is because these are sort of deep down and everything, we can be a little loosey-goosey with our brush strokes. We can be a little free-spirited, you know? You can be a little, I just do what I want to do. I'm going to get some fresh color, though. Now, there's a lot of purple in this, so you're going to find that your water stains very quickly. I'm going to start out with my number 4 round, and as long as that gives me a nice result, I'm going to keep going with that. Lots of little blues, lots of little colors down here. So let's play. I'm going to get a little bit of my phthalo and my ultramarine blue and my white. They kind of give each other some space to be, and I'm going to start kind of thinking about what could be here. I may turn my canvas, right, to give myself little bits of space. I'm pulling this down. You can see I'm just making petal strokes. They're a little bit darker, right? Can you even see that, John?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Now, a few of these I might paint in such detail as to put the centers in, but again, I want these to be a little bit back, a little bit reduced, and maybe even layering into the top balls. This is going to end up sounding funny no matter what I do, because I'm going to keep talking about balls.
That's okay.
Is it okay? I will often come in and maybe change direction. Now, as I turn my canvas, you know, you can turn your canvas too, even if you don't have this rotating table. You want to think about me turning my canvas, because the turning the canvas allows me to paint to the comfort angle of my stroke without distorting my body. Right? I'm not trying to move my arm in a weird position or my body in a weird position to get the feeling. I'm being pretty loose about this. These are here. We can see them. Some of them might be a little bit lighter and maybe like apply to a little petal hanging out here or there. You know, I could come here and say, oh, maybe there's a little bit of a center right there. Little bits of centers, and already kind of gives that, ooh, there could be like little flowers there. What's happening?
There could be.
There could be little flowers there. Another little place that there could be little flowers is down here.
Emergent flowers.
Little, yeah, they're deep back in the plant. I'm grabbing my phthalo blue and my ultramarine, and let's come here, and I do want to make sure that these are in the background enough. Now, what's wild is some of these almost get into a blue-green. So I'm going to take my Naples Yellow light. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous?
Oh, yeah.
So I can get into that color. I realized looking on YouTube that there was a lot of just expressionist, impressionist hydrangeas out there where it was just like little square strokes that built up a totality, which is so gorgeous. And then there was a lot of one stroke, but there wasn't a lot of paintings that kind of took us between those two spaces. And I realized we needed that in the hydrangea because that you can do. If I need to layer up, I can get into the dark blue. And then so these are kind of pulling here, and you can see I'm just giving myself those strokes. Mm-hmm. Do you guys remember the curves, those curve the comma to the right, curve the comma to the left. Curve the comma, my friend.
Yes.
And I can even use a little of, maybe a little yellow and white. And where I have 4 or 5 petals kind of coming together, I can kind of give a center. Mm. And that'll create a couple focal flowers that look like they might be sort of standing out and being there. Now around this edge and through this edge, we're going to be more into magenta. So let's call this one step, and then we'll do the next group of diminished flowers that are a different color mix on the next step. How does that sound?
That sounds pretty good.
Does that sound pretty good? All right, I'm going to let John take a picture of this, and while he's taking a picture of that, you can put up a step, and I will, again, demonstrate that stroke while you're taking the picture. How does that sound? Okay. So let's talk again about the stroke. All right, so I have these here. I'm going to make sure. The paper, if you've noticed, this paper is always thirstier. Stroke to the right, stroke to the left. See how that goes? There we go. It's good to practice. And you can see as I bring it around, it can get diminished, it gets smaller, it gets personality. Huh? Oh, no, it's okay. I can just keep showing it as we go. And they'll be like, oh, I get it. At some point, it clicks. It is a good idea, my friends, to take your paint and your brush out and just practice on occasion, right? I can throw a floral up in a matter of minutes because I have a series of brush strokes that are mine. They're not one strokes. They're just me understanding my tool, my paint, to work through a construct very quickly and layer it up because I understand my tool. All right, next one. These are more magenta, so I'm going to take a little of my Quinacridone Magenta and some of my Dioxazine Purple together. I'm going to mix much stronger to the magenta and just a smidge. Oh, just a smidge of white, just so they show. And I'm going to make sure that there's this hint of flowers or petals in this purple space that are below my focused flower. All right, that could be maybe part of it. Oh, that's a little bright. Too much white. Too much white. Knock that back. I need to make sure I've got something here. It's a nice little one in perspective. You can always kind of come off and make sure one's there. A little purple, a magenta pushes it back. Now through here, also purple and magenta. You can see I'm building forms that I could put a little center in if I wanted to focus my attention there. Right, like one that comes forward here. It's got a nice petal there. One there. And then one a little bit in perspective.
Ashley's really loving the extra tips.
Are they helping? I hope they're helping. I think sometimes, you know, when we're teaching, we're just reaching in and going, would this help? Maybe a little more purple. I'll get some white into it. And these are pretty deep and dark, so I'll go blue. Haven't rinsed my brush. You can see I'm pulling them through there. Just trying to make sure that the distant, they're going to register. They're going to show as flowers, but they're going to show as deep in the bush. Deep in the flower bush. When you're up close on these, I personally don't think there's a lot of value in getting into, I'm going to go ahead and grab a little bit of my yellow and some of my phthalo and white. That's my Naples Yellow, phthalo and white, just to do a couple centers. You can see where we hit some centers. It says, oh, there's a flower there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it makes them pop.
Because we're thinking like an artist. Right? Doesn't matter what style of painting we're doing. Doesn't matter if it's decorative painting, or doesn't matter if you're painting for a gallery in an upcoming show. The thought processes for both artists are very similar, if not identical, even though technique and form and goals for the outcome of the artwork might be very different. All right. So you just want to look at that and go, you know, do you feel that that's full enough? I like to make sure that things look, you can see I'm putting little brush strokes here. What am I doing? I'm filling in space. But the value is so deep that they'll just a little bit register to my eye. It's not what's going to pull my focus. It's going to actually be a few flowers in these flowers that really pull my focus, and then a lot of beautiful expression throughout. Still have to pay attention to form, value, color, shape, technique, all those things. But we get to play a little bit on the process. All right, that was a step. We are done with that. We're good. Are we not good? I'm ready for step 4. Now, as in earlier, we put in a deep value to build up more structured objects on. We're going to do a similar thing here. We're going to loosely paint each ball shape with some more expressive strokes. And that's going to give a structure saying that there's a full floral presentation with lots of depth, lots and lots and lots of depth. In that moment, and you're like, wait, where does this orient? So the blue-green flowers are over here more on the corner. All right. I'll wait for, I lost my cameraman. Are you okay? Are you okay? All right. So let's come up here. This one is a little more in magenta and purple, much like these in the background. I'm taking a 1/2-inch angle brush. You could use your round again. I just like the angle brush for this type of loose painting. I'm going to make brush strokes. They will be darker here towards the edge and a little brighter towards the center, but all fairly deep. I'm using purple and magenta. I don't want to paint out all my little petals, but I do want to give a space that the main floral structure will be built from. And you can see that's quite, it's magenta, but it's quite deep. Little magenta, a little purple. Now, a lot of painters do gorgeous entire paintings using this kind of like single stroke. We just show some of the petals, you know, full on edge. And we're going to use a little of that thinking there, but not all of that. However, that gives us a little bit of a structure that we're starting to see. Another thing that you can do at this stage to help yourself is to add a little highlight into where you know there's maybe a little more light on that ball. Now we have this one here. This is a little more of a soft blue. It's got some of the magenta and purple in it, but it really is going more to soft blue. I'm going to take my ultramarine and my white. I'm still going to use a fairly dark blue. And again, 1/2 inch angle. You could use a bright if you don't have an angle. I'm just wanting something to help me build the form up of this. I need the blue to be dark enough so that the highlighted petals coming up still show. But the movement of what's happening here, it's going to be underneath everything. So even as I layer it up, that impression, that structure that I'm building, it will support those strokes. We're giving ourselves support, right? Moving over to this one, maybe I kind of move it into a phthalo blue ultramarine space, kind of between the two of them. Similar, but just slightly different. See how it's just got a little bit of a different cast to it? You need to get it more into the phthalo, you can. The reason the two blues can be nice playing against each other is it's going to help you see your structure even as you paint. Now I can even get a little blue and purple into this. Look at that. A little blue and purple. I added some blue and purple, creating some depth right there at that corner. I'm shading a darker value around those edges. And come in with a little blue. I have not taken the work out of the sort of background petals and flowers that are hidden that I had. Here coming forward, it's still in that magenta and purple, maybe a little more purple. I will go ahead and add some white to catch it, but this is still essentially this part of that ball. We don't have any leaves or petals to be worrying about like that, so we can really just be in our color. You can see I'm just doing these loose strokes, and I'll show these to you when John takes the picture, how I was putting out these strokes on the paper so you can really see them. Because it's a very loose, expressive space that we're going to be in that eventually comes together to a very defined space with what feels like very botanical painting, even though we were very painterly to get there. All right, I think we're ready for a step, and I'm going to show them real quick while we're photographing this step. Oh, do you want me to photo? I'm going to dry this real fast, babe.
You're just going to give it a quick dry?
Yeah, if I can unhook. There we go. Just a quick dry.
All right, no problem. Had a quick dry. That's good. So that shouldn't take very long. Good little steps in here. Make sure you dry before the layer, dry between the layers. That way, when your next layer of petal is painted in, then it has its nice, crisp, unmuted vibrancy. So a lot of times if the under layer is still wet, then it can muddle up the paint color a little bit. It can not leave as crisp lines. It can make the surface a little sticky, so it's difficult to paint across. But, you know.
All right.
All right.
There we go. It's a very dark painting right now.
It is.
It's very dark, but when it gets into the light, it's going to be so light and bright and cheerful. You're going to love it. I wonder if I just got paint all over my shirt. I just don't. Okay. All right. So if you guys were trying to know how I was getting that sort of out there, I'm using my angle brush. I'm kind of weaving the strokes together. Can you guys see how those are woven together? That's how I'm getting the flower built, and I'm taking up that whole circle. Oh, okay. Thank you. See how I'm going? It's a way of kind of creating an implied botanical structure without pulling the eye into specific architecture of the plant. Right now, we're leaving it where the brain can finish the flower. And that lets the viewer be part of the painting. I've got to orient my flowers again the correct way. Yep. So here we go.
Get them oriented.
Yeah, and I'm going to show you something again on my iPad. There's a lot happening here, right? But there are certain stars on these flowers. There are standouts. There are particular little subflowers that just say, look at me, I'm so fantastic. And they're on each bud. Those are ones that we are going to want to pay attention to. So if you look here at this one, right, and I will give myself another layer. Well, this one's pretty. That one is very defined, right? We think about that one. This one right here. We've got one here that's kind of thinking about it here. And maybe here. I could have a little bit of a definition here. A lot of the rest of that, not really that defined, is it? Mm. Even though this is a very busy flower, even in the photograph, it's not that defined. So as we're going through, we're going to be looking for the stars, right? The standouts. Where are we focusing our attention for more detail? And where are we not expending our effort needlessly and almost counterproductive to our goal as an artist to have the viewer's attention very specifically focused, but yet leave room for their imagination to fill in the gaps, right? We're in a collaboration with ourselves and our work on the journey of being a painter and with the viewer who's going to see the painting later. We're in a collaboration. They didn't know they were in a collaboration, but they are. All right. So there we go. Take those away. So you see that there's stars. There's stars in the moment, isn't there? Now, you can do these with your brush strokes. You could sketch them out in a detailed way and then paint them in. There's a lot of ways to do this. I'm going to do these with my brush strokes because that's what I very much enjoy. And one of the ways on how I know to do this is I'm going to paint the flowers in the way that they layer with their petals. So I'll pick my stars out in the first place, and the one that's here, that's going to be the first one because it kind of goes layer, 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 layer. It's so weird, but it does. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to get a little of my magenta and some white. And I know that that one, we have the petal that's farthest behind, so I'm going to make a little mark so I know where it is. You know, painting that and getting that worked out in there. And then there is a little bit of one kind of across the way. And I'm going to grab a little bit more white. And that one's going to be mostly on top. Now, I may come through. I'm going to grab some magenta and some white as I'm going. Maybe some purple. And I will paint around this one some of my comma strokes. Right? So I've got a flower that I've really considered out here where I've really detailed out those petals. And then I've got some brush strokes where they're kind of in that comma space. All right. I can come in and even, be a little bit thoughtful about this. Now, on top of that, there's one here, and I got to figure out where the next one is. So I'm going to come back here. It's the magenta and the Dioxazine Purple again. I'll add a little white. A little bit of a thoughtful petal there. That one's kind of at the back. These two at the sides. They sort of layer over. And this one now layers over that flower. And then my final one is right here. And I may want to get a bit more white on it as I'm going forward. But now I'm starting to see that and that. Right? Around these petals, I talk a little bit about what we could see with smaller strokes. Getting a little magenta. We've got another flower coming forward. And what I want to look for is what's the furthest back petal, because that's the one I paint first. What are the two I layer on next, and what's the final one? So on this one, believe it or not, it's farther back petal. Kind of is right here. And then it's got its two little side purples. So I'm going to paint those in a little bit thoughtfully. And as I'm going, I'm like, oh, I got a hole going there, so I'll have to fill that hole. It's important to make sure that your flower is filling out. There's more petals there in focus, but let's make sure that our hydrangea is full of implied flowers. So I'm still into my comma stroke now. And I'll fill out those comma strokes. Very busy kit, these. Very busy kit. And this is just how I do mine. I cannot tell you how many ways there are to do it. But my hydrangeas have a really unique look, and I kind of really love lilacs and hydrangeas, and I used to do them a lot, so I have a lot of feeling around how I do them. I'm going to come forward. Now, interestingly enough, I'm going to go ahead and get some of my Naples Yellow now into my magenta. That's really going to pop this one forward. It's got 4 petals, so I want to make sure I've got those showing. But it's another a little focus one. And then I can come here and add some of the Naples Yellow and Magenta comma strokes too. Because these warm petals layer in. I'm going to add a little white, more Naples Yellow. Okay. So that's the next part of that flower structure built up. This layer of kind of looseness in the flowers is going to come here, it's going to go here, it's going to go here, and it's going to go here. Then we're going to come back through and then add some detailing with our phthalo blue, our white, and then our dots. All right, so let's call this a step.
All right.
And then we'll do this little bunch here.
That seems pretty good.
That little bunch here next. Just building up. Hydrangea, so busy, so full of petal. Why you so full of petal, Hydrangea?
Sounds like you're starting a spoken word with.
Mike Myers. It is.
I was saying Cinnamon's going to break out into some Mike Myers spoken word.
Hydrangea! Hydrangea! It's okay to just...
Purple flower, you bring me joy as she paints every day. Snap, snap, snap.
Snap, snap, snap. I'm going to need fresh water soon. So I'm on fresh right now, but those 2 cups will need to be changed out. On this one here, we're going to be going into, again, our blues. We have our ultramarine. We have our phthalo. There are purples and magentas in it, but what I find is it's nice to kiss through with a primary set of colors, and then you come back with the pops as you have them, and then that helps things kind of come forward in an unexpected way. And again, just how I would do it, and I think it's an awesome way of doing it, and I'm so happy to share it with you. I'm going to take a little of my ultramarine and my titanium white. Right? And yeah, there's bits of pink, there's bits of that. We'll try to weave that through, but right now let's get into that blue and white. Okay. We know where we have some, I got to turn this one off, and turn you off, and then turn you on. Where do we have some focal flowers? Well, there's a really wonderful side focal flower right here that we could talk about. You know, try to find its bottom petal and then capture its tops. And that's always an interesting, fun challenge. Noticing the layering of the petals. It's a little bit in perspective, so I get to paint it a little bit kind of off facing that direction. It's good to be able to do. Another little grouping of them. Because some are in focus, right?
Mm-hmm.
This one, the flower kind of comes forward a bit. And then this one almost has, the flower is in focus. So I'm going to curl it forward. So that has a bit of a petal curl. That will put the center in there. I feel like I want to improve that there. A little wider.
You have Sennelier Abstract and Phthalo Blue, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's just hard to find sometimes.
So, because it's not called Phthalo Blue, it's called Primary Blue.
Oh, there you go. Okay, Andy, there's
you're looking, if you're looking for Phthalo Blue and Abstract, you're looking for PB15, which is the Phthalo Blue that they have. So in student paints, they don't have PB15 :3, which is professional phthalo blue by a screen shade. They don't do that. You don't get that on an economy paint. But you do get PB15, which is almost a true primary blue. It doesn't have the green bias to it. It mixes a little more primary. And it's called anything from primary blue to phthalo blue, depending on the company. But what you're looking for, somewhere on that tube or package, it's going to say under pigment PB15. That's all you got to know.
And congratulations to Lori, who got a promotion while watching our show.
Congratulations! That is awesome!
Just like, as the paint dries.
Now, I know this can be really like, what? The reason I put this at a 3 hoot, even though these techniques are on the surface very simple, is because sometimes executing them is a little bit harder than you would expect. Now, sometimes I'll get more into my blue here. Remember those little comma strokes of petals that are perhaps peaking petals. Partials, we don't know. The whole flower isn't necessarily visible. We're just trying to get some focals and some partials. Like prints. I definitely want to put a nice big kind of thoughtful flower here. Nice big petal, right? 2 little side petals. I'll move my canvas when I need to, just to make sure that I'm getting good positioning for what I'm trying to do. That's pretty well done. I can sometimes get in the phthalo blue too. That can really pop in these spaces. The phthalo gives a different little aspect. Also, interestingly enough, so does, look at this, getting a little Naples Yellow into it. Nobody's sad when Naples Yellow gets in on the party.
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep going. I know I'm going to put one sort of much more in focus there, and I'm weirdly going to let some of my pink get into this one.
Mm-hmm.
Getting a little more white on my brush, but it's clearly a little more in focus. Other petals that show, but are not as in focus. We got a lot going on here. Grab some yellow and let those petals kind of peek out, show out. Get a little bit of that in there. There we go. Just some stuff is happening there. We're telling our story. We're sticking to it. Fun little beginning there. All right. Let's call that a step, and then we'll do this one. And I'm just breaking them up so that you guys understand that there's this one, and then this one, and then this one, and this one. And then we go through and hit some detailing. More holistically.
Okay, here we go.
Hydrangea, you thwart me with your many petals. It's okay to yell at your canvas on occasion. Like, why you be so difficult, Hydrangea? Just makes you want to go back. Remember, you can do this with cotton balls. I have a video. It's 5 minutes. It uses cotton swabs. If you're just like, this is too much for me, you might enjoy the cotton swab video. I get it. Sometimes I cotton swab too. Sponging is also nice. But again, no matter what you're painting or how you're painting it, it's really always all about, right, what's going on with the light value form, all those things. Lots of ways to accomplish a painting, lots of ways to get something done. Okay, so now we have some nice big like focals, you know, that we've really got to be like, ooh, what's going on? Might even get my Naples Yellow. I'll just get some muted. More white on there. On that side with the blue. We don't mind that we've got a side on with the blue. Here we go. Focal flower. Maybe get a little purple and white going here. Little purple, phthalo blue, and white is always a fun color combo. Gonna build this all out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Show this whole petal. Now we've got this guy in focus. We've kind of focused on these guys. So we've got to make sure that we're building our focus. I like my phthalo blue and my Dox purple. They make a fabulous color combo. So that was a nice.
Kathy's really appreciating this. She says, this is incredible. I think this is one of the very best tutorials. You're breaking this down and talking about the planning and execution. It's like the light bulbs are just going off.
Yay! I love light bulbs. One, because they prevent me from tripping in the dark, which I'm prone to do. But mentally and emotionally in our painting, we sometimes trip in the dark, don't we? We're like, I feel like there's a thing that should happen there, but the light bulb isn't on. So I'm very glad your light bulb turned on. That's the goal. And grab some of the blue here. And then back into the purple. That's a nice one. But I've got to tuck in some little commas, little peeking petals, don't I?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so many petals that don't show completely in a hydrangea. It's a busy flower. So busy, this flower. It's like it's got so much shopping to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to sort of try to peek in here and go, where could I fill something in? What needs a little bit of something? Now there's a beautiful one happening right here. So I want to make sure that I keep in mind that I've got to be adding that in as I go. Little white and purple. White and purple. Remember on the commas though, to have some big and have some small and change up the directions that you would put those, because petals grow a lot of different directions, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
And they're not lining up in little tidy rows. That's not a petal's temperament in any way. Little phthalo blue and white. To make sure that we see things. Now right here, there's the furthest back petal, so I'm going to paint that one. I'm always looking for my furthest back petal. And then there's two nice big side petals. Sometimes it's important to remember that some of these have more than more than 4. Sometimes they have a few more, and you will want to showcase one with maybe a little bit of a mutation in it, where it plays against its siblings. Blue and purple. Peeking out here. Phthalo blue and purple, peeking out. And don't forget to kind of make sure that this stays a ball. Sometimes I find that when I'm painting, I get so into the different strokes that I forget to keep everything in a ball formation.
Instead of groupings?
Yeah, in its little cluster. That just made me think of the Lex. It's weird how certain words make you think of something, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You can always go back through. If any petals don't make you happy, you can always go back through and change them. You're never, never, ever stuck. I can get some pink in there. I can play that up. But that gives me one very rough. It's rough at this stage. It's rough. It's colorful. It's fun. But it's a little rough, and we're okay with that. We want that. All right, you ready to do the next one? Because we gotta loosely paint this other flower ball.
Okay. So you ready for your next step?
We're ready for the next step. Bum 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 bum. Oh yeah, this was challenging for the camera painting tonight. Here, take a look at this. And remember, guys, if any of these lessons, if you're getting into them, you're like, man, this is like exploding my brain. Right now, through these step-by-steps, we're creating mini books where these things are written out and you can look at each step. Oh, you love the mini books, Art? Yeah, they make a big difference, right?
Yep.
They make a huge difference. Now I'm going to get in here and take, maybe a little of my phthalo blue and my white light. And let's get some of these darker, deeper, and I'll get some Quin into the mix on occasion. Petals on this particular top ball, and it worked out. These are some deep ones that are off the fringe. They're not in my focus. And that's okay. Things can be off the fringe, and not in my focus. Not every single flower needs to be in my focus. And I'm being very loose with these little comma strokes around here. This is like a comma to the right. This one kind of commas to the left. I think what I need here, though, is maybe some small, different sizes of these. When you break up the size of petals, you help inform the naturalness of the structure. It really does help it. And it also creates some shading, as you can see there. And you do want some shading. I really like the combo of these colors against each other. I did that one, and I did that one. Really, really, really love that. So let's get into here and get into that. I love it. Now, I see a nice focal one here. There's a couple focals up here. Focal here and down. So I just want to make sure that I've got some focuses. Let's focus some of my attention on some of these flowers. A little bit of my phthalo blue, Quin, and white. I'm looking for the bottom petal. That's what I'm always doing. When you see me like focusing like that, I'm like, where's my bottom petal? Oh, there it is. There we go. Grabbing up those different mixes. I love doing that. Little purple and magenta and white. And some focuses. Focus my attention on something.
Yeah.
Does not mean it's the only place my attention is focused, but it is important to create that sense of focus.
Those flowers just draw you in.
They do, don't they? And grab a little bit of my Phthalo Blue and Ultramarine Blue. I'm always playing there. Trying to capture some structure. And you can do that. Getting into my Phthalo Blue. Building up. And like we did before, it can be lovely to have some of our magenta and quin together. Maybe pop some of these a bit. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Grabbing a little bit of that quin magenta. Rounding this out. Filling it out.
Yeah.
All right. Sometimes what you see me doing is like going, man, I want to improve the shape of this. And I'm just grabbing bits of color and going, you here, be improved in your shape. Okay, let's call that a step. And then we're going to start going back and creating some thoughts and some details on some flowers that help them pull forward and become more focused in our eye. Maybe we'll put in a few more comma strokes to push some stuff back. So you can see how there's this space where like you paint every petal. There's a space where you paint kind of the overall form and shape and everything of the ball. And where there's a place where you one stroke everything and it just builds up in layers all the way to you sponge yourself a hydrangea. It all has meaning and purpose. All right. Now let's take a few of these that we have and just sort of think about how they might be. I'm going to get some water. Pour a little of this off. All right. And on here, we're going to take a little of our Phthalo Blue. All right. Got a little bit of our Phthalo Blue. And white. Let me dry this because I think I'm dragging my arm through paint.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Another good reason to make sure you dry your surface is so that as you're, working on over it, you don't accidentally drag your arms, shirt sleeve or something through it, jewelry, whatever you may have on your wrists, watches. Who knows? Lots of weird things could be on your wrist, I suppose. So, anyway, there she is. Before we get too philosophical about wrist decorations.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I have to kind of rest. I suppose I could go like this. I didn't have to drag my arm through paint at all. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just think about some of these, in a little more detailed way. Painting with a little more focus.
Yeah.
All right, where I want to have it really pop in the pink, I can use my Naples Yellow. Will help it pop so much. Grabbing little elements. And then in the centers, I can start to kind of shade in some detailing. And then I can even take a little Naples Yellow. My white is really skinning. The house must be even drier than my wet palette can handle today. Capture a little bit of that on there.
I think folks were curious why I'm so quiet tonight. I think it's because I'm focused on the camera work.
You are really quiet tonight. It's definitely noticeable.
You're spinning the camera, the surface around so much.
Yeah, and it's making me nervous because, I know sometimes that makes it harder for people to see. And
what I've been able to say is that I'm primarily been watching you paint. So the reason why I'm quiet is because almost every brushstroke requires a camera adjustment. So I'm not able to read chat as much, so I'm very engaged in camera operation right now. And that's all that it is that especially as you're doing a surface where you move around a lot and I have to focus the camera and adjust it a lot, it just requires more of my attention there.
It does, doesn't it?
So
add some highlights to some of these. They're in the background, but they deserve highlights, right? They deserve little petals being singled out. I'm gonna put out some more white because my white is getting dirty, and that's something to worry about. Your white can get real dirty. You don't want your white. A little quinacridone, a little Naples Yellow. Clean right there. It's going to make a very vibrant highlight. There we go. Now we start to think about how things are in focus. Painting them more thoughtfully. Let's put a little bit of the Naples Yellow and Quin there. I'm going to pull a little of my Naples Yellow aside so that it's a little more accessible. So I'm just trying to build up and find those moments in these flowers, right? Let's take a little of our turquoise, our phthalo blue and white out. It can be very dramatic. I'm going to stroke these flowers with that. Just these petals, just some. Now I'm using kind of line and value, and see how this is just starting to be a thing?
I do.
It's really wonderful, isn't it? You can take a little of my phthalo green from earlier even, and my Naples yellow. Maybe a little of the turquoise. I'll try to find the center of these flowers. A little bit there. And then you're going to want some contrast is what it's going to be. You need some contrast to that center. So peek in some here and there. I think we can give some hidden petals here, some definition, some wow. So let's take a little of this, just a small amount of my yellow. Too thick there. Get into my purple. Just want to make sure that, yeah, I've got these petals and they're there. And a little bit hiding.
Yeah.
A little bit hiding out. Keep going. I'm going to work over here right now. Similar stuff. It's not really dissimilar, but I want to find maybe some different value. Maybe some different kind of expression through the flowers. I'm going to start with my Phthalo Blue and Ultramarine. And if you'll remember, there's kind of some flowers here. They're a little in focus.
Mm-hmm.
They're more in the blues. So I want to kind of bring that back through here. You can always pop a little center even in the out of focus ones. Bringing it forward. Finding that. A little of my Quin and purple. Maybe even whiter. Because I feel like the value here is so much lighter. And I'm over by where I was mixing the magenta and Naples yellow, and there's some beautiful kind of accidental mixes happening here. I don't want to lose that. I'm kind of like leaning into going, wow, that's really good. I like that much better. Much lighter in here. I'm starting to really lighten up and get dynamic.
You're really moving the surface around.
I'm so sorry.
You don't have
If
to
that is
apologize.
hard
No.
on everybody, I am thinking about it.
No, you're fine. I'm just noticing, like, you're staying very. I'm not zoomed in too much, so it's really easy to keep track of you. Track you. I can track you.
Well, on pieces where you have a lot of petals like this, where you have a lot going on, you really need to be able to move your surface. On the easel, on the flat, you don't want to be trying to paint at this crazy angle and paint at this crazy angle and paint like that. You want to move it so that you're comfortable. You don't want to be uncomfortable for, the sake of your canvas. Looking at that, looking pretty cool. And I feel like if I go in with some cool turquoise, that's going to go over really well. Definitely some light. Just really enjoy the play of these colors against each other. And I'm stroking the outline of the petals to help them be defined, to be focused. But I can always capture a little bit of this and this, and we can always be pop it against pink, and the contrast of that the dimensionality of that is always going to be intriguing to our eye.
Breaking stuff.
Are ya?
Always.
I can always grab a little bit of the yellow and white. Kind of pulling some fun little vocals there.
Mm-hmm.
Playing it, doing it, focus. Let's call this a step, and then we'll hit the lower half.
So while I'm taking that, are there mediums that will help slow the drying time of your paint?
Acrylic glazing liquid gloss is fantastic. It really is. I have a wet palette, and normally that's sufficient. But sometimes our just base air is so dry that no matter what I do, no matter how I mist it, no matter how I bag it, no matter what negotiations me and my palette and my paint have, it just wants to do what I call skinning, which is the surface of your paint begins to dry and the center of it is still wet. So it just stops being as lovely to paint as maybe it could be. It just stops being as fun and as lovely as it could be to paint, and starts to become a little frustrating. And it's just one of those things. I'm gonna put a little bit out of my yellow again just to make sure that I'm keeping it clean. It is clean, but just keeping it clean and kind of thinking about it. All right, so I'm going to, I think I can stay on this water for a minute. As you do. Maybe a little of my turquoise and purple. Start to play over here. Phthalo blue. A little dots, but I do want it to be definitely lighter. Maybe a little more purple. Oh, yeah, that's a little bit better.
Very nice.
I think purple and white is what we need right now. What the world needs now is purple and white.
Mm-hmm.
Looks really nice on top of the blue base. It gives us something to kind of work from. I can always come back with my blues. Always come back with my blues. You can always come back with those turquoise with the green and yellow. So, like if you take a little of your Phthalo Blue and your Naples Yellow together, oh, they make such a wonderful pop of color. I do want it to be light enough to have contrast. But you can see that's really quite something. Sometimes it's just about building up. Yes, you should always use your reference because it helps you know what is super important to what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like some things are not really that important and some things are so important. And how you know what to pay attention to and what to let go of as an artist is in your reference. If you really look at it, certain things pull your focus. And in creating color, line, and contrast to say this is more important than this, as artists, we can find a way. I think that needs to be more. There we go. Get focus going as well. A little bit of light color and put in those centers.
That's so pretty.
Thank you. There we go. Just painting. Make sure that those in the background there are still really stunning.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they're background leaves doesn't mean they should be boring. All right. Now another thing that I can do is find ways to put little focus on maybe the center of the flowers.
Mm.
And just a few of them just to say these centers are a bigger deal. And then finally we'll come over here and finish out this wonderful grouping.
Wow, they really come together like that, don't they?
They do. They find their way. And you've got time. You can spend a lot of time with it. However you choose to do that, though, you still have to make those same decisions. Your decisions, I'm going to add a little highlight to the center of this, are not going to really substantively change. You know? Your decisions about what you choose to focus on and where you choose to spend your time on the painting. And therefore, where you spend the most time on the painting is where your viewer is going to spend the most time on the painting.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to hold them. One of the reasons that sometimes it can be initially gratifying to paint something very realistically. That is initially gratifying because that's the first thing that you're trying to do as a painter, is figure out how to paint what you see, right?
Yep.
You're like, man, I just want to paint what I'm seeing. And so the first time you really do that, that is super gratifying, right? Because you're like, you hit that first level boss. Painting what I see as I see it in some kind of a way. But then what'll happen is that you'll realize that you do things as an artist, like you put everything in focus. Everything's in the same focus. None of it's diffused. None of it's, coming back and forward. And so, like, then you start to sit there and say, well, maybe not all of this should be in my focus. You start to focus your artistic mind in the same way a photographer focuses a lens. Right? Because a photographer doesn't necessarily put everything in infinite focus, do they, John? Right? Some things are more prominent and in what's called the range of focus. And then some things are out of focus, or in bokeh, we talk about that a lot. There's this moment in your painting where you stop putting every single layer in the same focus. And then the painting will start to have more of an emotional kind of feel for you. It's a little bit of a messy stroke. Move that out. Start to think about where all that is. Maybe you push some petals back in the flower with your purple and magenta. Change that focus on them. That's okay too. You can pay attention to some and push back some and take in others. It's all okay. I'm going to get some of this is my Naples Yellow and Phthalo Blue. And a little white, and then I can outline this some. How is that doing? You starting to see that?
Mm-hmm.
So I can't see y'all's chat. So if you're going, no, or...
They're saying this is awesome.
Okay. You guys are like, no.
Everyone's giving big thumbs up saying this is awesome. The yellow is a surprising, awesome.
It is unexpected and so worth the trip. But it's finding the spots where I really want to have it that is key. And I think on this I wanna add some of my kind of yellow and magenta. I think we might get some surprising ooh-ah out of it.
Mm. Oh, wow. That just really brings that little accent out, doesn't it?
Yeah. Color gets us a long way. Color takes us a long way. Color puts us a lot of places. You know. And the other benefit about being a little bit more petal specific instead of just pushing the brush and you know, creating petals that way is that we get a little more lifelike flowers and that their shapes are more varied like maybe they might be. I'm adding a little bit of highlights in pink. And I still feel like I could add a little more highlights here and there. I feel like, you know, I could do that. But I feel like if I do, I'll want to do it kind of on its own step, maybe on a last step where I'm kind of lightening some flowers. Maybe glazing up some flowers. So I want this to come forward a bit. What you see me doing here is just trying to find values that are pulling me forward a bit. And then we'll take the
I love how that yellow just wonderful little highlight.
this does a nice little center, doesn't it? All right, we'll call this a step, and then we have one step left.
You think so?
And I think so. I think we have one step left to sort of pull it all together. So let's call this a step, and then maybe two, maybe a glazing and a lining, but I might call glazing and lining the same step. Who knows? Just depends on, you know what, it's a Tuesday night, right? It's Tuesday night and we're painting. It's a good way to begin the week, I think, right? A good way to start things. It was pointed out to me that I didn't talk about WandaVision this weekend. That's because I'm still processing the episode. I'll be with you soon on it. on my feelings about it. It's kind of playing with these looking. Sometimes I like to look at things from a bunch of different directions.
Yeah.
I'm going to dry.
Make sure that she gets the next highlights on there. I know what she's up to. Getting all that in there. So, all right. She's drying a lot longer than I thought. No, there's okay. So she was a little bit longer than I thought.
I'm going to put out that glazing liquid that we talked about.
Great glazing liquid.
And then I'm also at, ooh, that was too much glazing liquid. Never need this much glazing liquid. That was crazy. It was a lot. All right. And I can use the same brush. I do want to make sure that my water is fairly good. And I'm going to test it on one. And if it works, then I'm going to do it everywhere. I'm going to take my glazing liquid and a little bit of white. This almost makes like a zinc white. And I'm going to glaze some of my flowers right over everything I painted with a little bit of light color. Do you see how that lightened it?
I do.
But it weirdly left what I painted. I'm going to come through and I'm going to glaze some of this a little bit. So if you don't have this, you could just take a white kind of thinned with water, or even a dry brushing. But the idea is to leave the detailing of what you had. But I'm raising the value a bit. And come and do kind of a similar thing here.
Mm-hmm.
You could glaze with yellow. You can glaze with blue. You can actually use a lot. I like to glaze with white sometimes when I'm just pulling up a value of something. In other words, I'm taking it out of the darker value and trying to get a lighter value out of it without substantively changing the colors that I initially chose to use. I like that.
Mm-hmm. The yellow really is an unexpected highlight color.
It is unexpected for the highlight color. You could also use a yellow green.
Yeah?
Yeah, weirdly. Yeah, weirdly. Weirdly use yellow green. So glazing, this particular product is used to extend paint. It's used to slow down the drying time. It's also used to glaze. In most other companies, those are separate products entirely. And I kind of like that one up there dark. So I'm going to let that be. I really just like that as it is. And then I think I'm going to take my fluid white, which is going to look a lot like my glazing liquid. And I'm going to take a number 1 monogram liner. That's this one here. I'm going to make a very, very light turquoise, almost white. And I'm going to detail line some of my focal flowers.
Oh, the little highlights there.
Yeah. Not everyone. Just some. Just a little bit of, oh,
That
focus.
really looks nice.
Kind of creating some interesting little shapes and where my attention goes.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the dotting the white around something and then coming back with the lining. Isn't that pretty?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I don't know that it is. I think he would just agree with me no matter what.
No, I love it. I think it's awesome.
Sometimes I will create a little bit of energetic line inside. I like it.
I love it.
Just to say that's shape or that's form. Line can convey a lot of energy about something. And again, this isn't something, this is like sometimes you guys ask me, how would you paint something? Like if you were just doing it for yourself. Right?
Mm-hmm.
If I wasn't doing it just for my students, how would I do something?
Ooh, we have some new Emoji Club members.
We have new Emoji Club members. Thank you for joining Emoji Club.
Karen and Jessica, thank you.
I think I damaged this brush the last time I washed it. The wonderful thing about this kind of thinking, do you see how this is like way more in focus now?
Mm-hmm.
And it does. It gives us something to think about on the focus. Now, you could just say just this, but I'd like this around, so I'm going to do this around. So, how is everybody doing?
Really pretty good with this. They love this.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm really excited for this weekend. I'm going to really get into the trunk of the tree. I'm just like, I've been looking at it and I'm like, oh, we're going to get twisty. Again, this is the fluid white acrylic. I always have a bottle of this sort of around. And you can, if you want to put a color into it, you just bring a little color over into it. I like to try to capture some of the like energy of the line. This is something I do a lot. Is I like to find those spaces in my paintings. Isn't that fun? It's a really fun one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do a similar thing here. This is really kind of, I just do this everywhere. You know, the glazing did a nice job, I think, of lightening up the value. But the white lining for me is what pulls. This is white lining. Is what pulls the image together. And lets you really see it for what it is. I love to play with form. Dotting up and down. The texture matters. And I kind of move along quickly for lessons. You know, if I was just painting on my own pace, like my like own pace, I'd probably be moving a little more deliberately. I get asked that question a lot. I do kind of move quickly for online lessons, so that you guys aren't here for 5 hours of my musing. Not verbally, just like painting musing. 'Cause sometimes you muse when you paint. You like kind of play with line and you change your mind and you play with the line and then you go hydrangea and you play with the line. Like I might want to dot like yellow. Like there's just no, a lot of times when you're just painting for yourself, you just spend a minute in a painting. You could spend 5-6 hours in a painting. Or you can spend an hour. Like I love Acrylic April because we just spend an hour.
Yeah.
We could spend more for sure. But it's an hour or under. We just spend a little bit of time. Do you see how sometimes I like do like these little poetic?
Just get a little area.
Isn't that fun? How those lines create little poetic spaces. I think they're really rather special that way.
Oh, yeah.
Some lines being, you know, way more critical to the overall thing, and then other lines being just little moments, little curls. So then you decide, do I like that? Oh, I like that. That's working for me. That is super working for me. And then now at this stage, if I don't line this, that would look really out of place, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So you might be asking yourself a way to think of an artist, like think as an artist. And we're going to talk about this, especially more on Tuesdays. Another way to think as an artist is when you're looking at the piece, if this one seems out of place and that out of place does not scratch that inner happy of your mind, because your artist mind has like this inner happy place, right? Like the ASMR people talk about that inner place inside their head. Artists have that little inner place inside their head. So if it's not scratching that, it probably means it's not there yet. And so there could be a time where this being out of place actually was like, ooh, that's so interesting. I will leave it. But as you can feel right now, it just looks unbalanced. Right? The thing to notice about it unlined is does it look less focused and far away? Yeah. But I feel like, and that's kind of cool. And if the arrangement of these were a little different, I might want that. But for this, I feel like, nah, I gotta do it.
You gotta put the lines in there.
Yeah, it really feels like that for me.
Luckily, you can do that.
Luckily, we all can do that.
Tia thinks the little lines bring it to life. Another level.
They do. Staging like this in a piece. And again, this is something I tend to love to do. This is where you get voice as an artist and you didn't just paint hydrangeas really well, right? Where somebody looks at your piece and goes, oh, that's a so-and-so. It's in these weird moments where you find, making little dots, expressions that have your piece look uniquely you.
So could you line it, then glaze it a little bit?
You could line it and glaze it again. Glazing is another way of blending and shading. Like if you're doing a water scene and you've got to have darker water in the like the water is darker than the sky, but it's reflected. You can paint that all darker, or you could just glaze it with a color that darkens it. These are both acceptable options for you as the creative. What we choose to line, and then again, what we choose not to line. See, I'm not lining those. Right? What we choose to line and how we line it matters. Because again, that creates another type of focus. Contrast creates focus. Color creates focus. Subject matter creates focus. Lots of little things that we can play with. To create focus. And then you're just looking, you're like, where's my balance, right? Is the balance there?
You must bring balance to the hydrangeas.
Yes.
To the hydrangeas.
Unlike Jedi, we like both our light and dark side to find our balance. Honestly, I think that may be the... Here's my thing. Thought for you on top of how to paint hydrangeas. I feel like the issue with Jedi is they needed to embrace both their light and dark sides and find a middle way between them.
A little bit more.
A little bit more. Might have resulted in a little less misery for everyone.
You know, when you sort of get down to it, Mace Windu was the ultimate Jedi.
Really?
Well, he was like, you have to go into the lore and that kind of stuff, but like...
Oh, no, I just want to hear your reasoning for this.
Well, he was the only one who was able to truly master the bringing the dark side of the Force to his Jedi fighting skills,
Mm-hmm.
and yet still be able to maintain control as, like, a Jedi. So that's why he had the purple lightsaber. It's the only lightsaber that said "Bad Jedi Master" on it. It was purple. And just saying, there's of all the guys with a lightsaber you didn't want to cross,
I'm
Mace
taking a little
was
yellow
the
and
one.
kind of also coming back with a little bit of yellow on some of our dots. I don't want to get my CAD. I had reserved it as an option, but I'll probably remove it from the materials list. Right? I reserved some colors. I reserved my CAD red and my burnt sienna and my CAD yellow as an option, just in case I wanted those. The right to pop my color. But I find that the nickel titanate, the PY53, my Naples Yellow light, the yellow drama color,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that one often, is exactly what I'm looking for. Because it is noticeably, it is yellow, but it's not yellow. Look at that. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun.
I think
I'll
that's
sign it.
great.
And take a little purple and a little blue, kind of get it on my white here. There you go. Notice that my signature is not as bright as the white lining. If I did that signature in white or anything brighter, your eye would see it because it's so dark here. The contrast is too much. So the reason that I did a mid-tone signature, it's legible, but not jumping up at you and attacking your face.
Oh, well, don't want that now,
Don't want that, do we? All right. So you see how we created some focus, some out of focus. We created some depth. We built up layers, and we created a really wonderful set of hydrangeas. Somewhere between all the different ways that we can paint hydrangeas. Hopefully this is something kind of new that you haven't just seen everywhere before, and you got a sense of like how to get your brush strokes to curve and how to get some of these techniques to come out. Is there anything before we go?
Let's see here. I think that's pretty much it. Everybody's loving this. They thought this was fantastic. Really good job on this. I think you connected with a lot of folks here.
Wait, hold on 1 second. All right. I kind of catch up to like, J Deb asked, could you apply the same technique with lilacs using a longer shape instead of a ball? Yes. This is the jam for lilacs. This is the jam. And you can do big, heavy lilac bushes this way and then pull some forward branches right into your face. That's a really good way to go. Okay.
I don't even see where you caught that question.
No, it was in the mods.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that question come up. Okay.
How do you make Naples Yellow light? That is a light yellow green. It's kind of a unique pigment. Judy tells, so what I would say is read the blog, the Naples Yellow blog. There are a couple mixes there. And there's also some good alternate reference colors. And then I see everybody before I go because I've been like on my thing trying to get my trailer to go, and my trailer hasn't been able to go. You know me. Hopefully I don't have sound. Woo! All right. So this is... okay, Chris says, would it be out there to line with a complementary color as an abstract likeness to it? Lining this with yellow would be stunning. It would be gorgeous. Those lines would really jump forward at you, right? So right now the lines are definitely there. You're definitely feeling their energy. But if you went into like a yellow or a yellow green, a yellow green, they would pop forward at you. Is that okay? Did I went in there, John?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was.
What do you mean?
I didn't know if it was okay. I didn't know if it was like, I just like totally took over the questions because I finished my reference in my work.
It's okay.
All right, guys. So, play. This is painting, guys. This is not, sometimes we get so serious. I was reading today in group, somebody was talking about how there were a few paintings into their acrylic April, and they were feeling so much tension and pressure inside themselves when they were doing the painting, and it wasn't relieving their anxiety or pressure. It was like creating more. When you're feeling that, you're forgetting to play. You're taking yourself and your results too seriously, and you're putting this like abstract pressure of expectation. So there's an artist you at home have in your head, an artist you kind of hope and expect to be and would like to be, and that there's some other artists that you perceive are that, and then you're hoping to be that, and it's this very undefined ball of expectation. You got to put that one down, right? There's an artist you're going to be, and that artist is going to show up somewhere between 100 and 500 paintings in when you weren't looking, right? This artist that just kind of comes out of the process, comes out of the journey. You're going to find things that you love about your creative process, and you're going to find things that you're super frustrated about in your creative process. You're going to find styles that you really enjoy, and you're going to find styles that you're like, it's cool, but it is not me. That's not going to happen until you do paintings, until you do a lot of paintings. So in each painting, in this painting, in the next painting, in paintings when we're doing like, boom, crazy realism, or in paintings when we're doing abstract, all I want you to do is your goal is to go, I'm going to be present in this moment. I'm going to enjoy the technique. I'm going to enjoy the color mixes. I'm going to try to notice when I'm really clicking on something or when something speaks to me and put that back in my artist box. And I'm going to let go of that pressure to be perfect. It has no purpose in your artistic journey, and it does steal your joy, which is different than doing hyperrealism. Hyperrealist artists aren't trying to be perfect. They're trying to do process and technique. It's that ideal. Does that make sense, John?
It does.
That ideal of who you should be versus who you are. Don't try to be that person. Be your best self today. Whatever that is, wherever you are. Not the artist that you're supposed to be 100 paintings from now. The best artist that you can be in this moment today. Comparison to nobody else, not even me. Deal?
Mm-hmm.
Promise? No pressure on yourself. If you're still here, you're a hero as far as I'm concerned. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. And I want to see you at an easel really soon. Bye-bye.